250,000 years ago, something carried its dead into the deepest, darkest part of a cave and left them there on purpose. Not washed in by a flood, not dragged down by a predator, carried down a crack so narrow a grown adult can barely fit through it, in total darkness, and laid to rest. And the thing that did it had a brain about a third the size of yours. Here's what keeps a whole field of scientists up at night. Burying our dead is supposed to be one of the things that make us human. It's grief, it's memory, it's knowing someone is gone and refusing to just walk away. We were sure you needed a big brain for that. We were sure you needed to be us. This is the story of a grave that, by every rule we thought we knew, should not exist. And the fight over whether it's real may tell us less about the creature that dug it, and far more about ourselves. You already know this feeling, even if you've been lucky so far. The silence in a house after someone's gone, the way we wash the body, choose the clothes, gather to say words over a hole in the ground. None of it helps the dead. All of it is for the living. That pull, to do something, anything, rather than just leave, runs so deep we almost never ask where it came from. For a long time, the answer looked simple. Burial was our signature. The oldest graves anyone agreed on belonged to people like us, and to our close cousins, the Neanderthals. Go to Qafzeh cave, in what's now Israel. Around 100,000 years ago, early modern humans laid their dead in the ground there, and they didn't just leave them. In one grave, a child was buried with the antlers of a deer set carefully over the body, an object of no use at all to the living. The soil around the bones was stained deep red with ochre, a pigment carried in from elsewhere and heated in a fire to reach exactly the right shade. That isn't disposal, that's a funeral. Then there's La Chapelle-aux-Saints in France. In 1908, an old Neanderthal man was found lying in what looked like a shallow pit. For a century, people argued about it. Did his people dig that grave, or did he simply die in a hollow? In 2014, after 12 years of work, a team led by William Rendu concluded the pit was deliberately dug and the body covered quickly before anything could disturb it. Not everyone is convinced, even now. But it was enough to widen the circle. Burial wasn't only ours, it was theirs too. And it could be breathtakingly tender. At Sunghir, in Russia, about 34,000 years ago, 2 children were buried head to head. Around them lay more than 10,000 beads, each one carved by hand from mammoth ivory. 300 pierced fox teeth, spears of straightened tusk. One of the children had badly bowed legs, a body that likely made every day harder. And still, they were sent into the earth dressed like the most important people in their world. Put it all together and a picture forms. Burial is what we do when we cannot accept that someone is simply gone. It's love that outlasts the person. And for a very long time, the evidence said it belonged to big-brained humans, and to no one else. Then a cave in South Africa broke the rule and pushed the whole story back 250,000 years. In 2013, 2 cavers were threading through a system called Rising Star, near Johannesburg. When they dropped into a chamber almost no one had ever seen. It was scattered with bones, not a handful. Over 1,500 pieces, from at least 15 individuals, men, women, children, infants. It became the richest early human fossil site ever found in Africa. And the creature they belonged to was something new. Scientists named it Homo naledi. Naledi is a walking contradiction. Its hands and feet look a lot like ours, and it stood upright. But it barely reached the height of a 10-year-old, and inside its skull sat a brain of maybe 500 cubic centimeters, roughly a third the size of yours. Everyone assumed a creature that primitive had to be ancient, millions of years old. Then, in 2017, a team led by Paul Dirks dated the remains. The answer landed like a shock. Naledi lived between 236,000 and 335,000 years ago. Think about what that means. 250,000 years back, this small-brained cousin wasn't a distant ancestor at the root of our tree. It was walking the same continent at the same time as the very first people who looked like us. And that raises the question that broke the whole debate open. How did all those bodies get to the bottom of that cave 250,000 years ago with no light and no easy way in? Because the naledi chamber is savagely hard to reach. To get there, you climb, you crawl, and then you meet a vertical fracture the team simply calls the chute, about 18 centimeters across at its tightest. They had to recruit a crew of especially slender scientists just to fit through it. There's no sign the bodies were washed in by water, no sign a predator dragged them down. So how did they get there? Lee Berger, who leads the Rising Star Project, gave an answer that went off like a bomb in his field. Naledi carried them, on purpose, climbing into the pitch black, over and over, to place its dead somewhere deep and hidden. In 2023, his team went further still. They argued the bodies were set into shallow pits, dug out, and then filled back in. Deliberate graves. If they are right, these are the oldest burials ever found, made 250,000 years ago, not by us, but by something with a third of our brain. And this is where the story stops being about a cave and starts being about us. Because a lot of very serious scientists think Berger has this wrong. When the burial claim went public, the pushback was fierce. A team led by Maria Martinon Torres, herself a leading expert on ancient graves, looked at the same evidence and said, plainly, that it wasn't enough. She couldn't make out a clearly dug pit. The bones weren't laid out the way a body usually is in a real burial. Others pointed out that a cave can gather bones all on its own. A corpse can slump, sediment can shift, water can seep in across thousands of years. Extraordinary claims need extraordinary proof, they argued, and this hadn't cleared the bar. One respected voice even warned that reaching too far could wreck the credibility of the whole extraordinary site. For a moment, it looked settled, a bold idea, knocked flat. But Berger's team didn't fold. They went back, ran more analysis, and in 2025 their evidence cleared peer review and was published in full. At least one reviewer who had doubted them changed his mind. The claim still isn't proven, it's still fought over, but it is very much alive. Now step back and notice something strange about the whole argument. Go to Shanidar Cave in Iraq. In the 1960s, an archaeologist named Ralph Solek-E found a Neanderthal buried there, ringed by clumps of ancient pollen. He had a beautiful idea, that Neanderthals had laid their dead on a bed of wildflowers. The world fell for it instantly. The flower burial became the image of the gentle, grieving caveman, and it lived in textbooks for 50 years. Then, in 2023, researchers took a hard second look at that pollen. The likeliest source they found wasn't mourners at all. It was bees, burrowing insects that had packed pollen into the cave floor long afterward. The flowers, in all probability, were never there. So watch what we do. When a story flatters us, when it makes an ancient human tender and poetic, we hold on to it for half a century. When a story threatens us, when it hands grief and burial to a small-brained creature 250,000 years gone, we demand it be proven beyond every possible doubt. Maybe the real question was never only, is it a grave? Maybe it was also this, is it us? Are we studying naledi? Or are we standing guard at the border of what we let ourselves call human? We may never know for certain what happened in that dark chamber. Bones don't speak, and the two sides may argue for a generation yet. But here is what the fight has already shown us. Somewhere around 250,000 years ago, in a place with no light and almost no air, something climbed down into the earth carrying the body of someone it knew. It didn't have to. There was no shelter in it, no meal, no advantage of any kind. It went down into the dark for the same reason we still stand at gravesides today. Because letting go is the hardest thing a mind can do, and some part of us simply refuses. If that's true, then the thing we were so sure made us human, the grief, the ceremony, the not walking away, is older than our species, older than our big brains. It was never really about the size of the brain at all. It was about the size of the loss. We didn't invent the funeral, we inherited it. Carried up out of the dark, 250,000 years ago, by hands far smaller than ours, that still couldn't bear to let go.